Hi, I'm James Kotecki. You are here in the C-Space Influencers Studio at CES 2019. And with us is Matt Van Houten, VP Product Development at Xandr. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. How do you define Xandr to people that are just learning about it for the first time here at CES?
Sure. Xandr is AT&T's advertising company.
Okay, period.
Make it simple.
Full stop. And so what is the place that you have in the ATT ecosystem? Give me a little bit more of an elaboration there.
Sure. So AT&T is now structured into 4 operating business. We have the international business. We have our communications business, which services mobility, broadband video for our customers. We have a advertising business, which is us, Xandr Media. And we have the newly acquired Time Warner, which is the entertainment business. So when you look across AT&T's portfolio, you've got these 4 divisions, of which Xandr represents data and analytics, all in the advertising space.
So there's a slogan that you have at Xandr Media, at Xandr I should say, make advertising matter.
That's right.
And it is actually plastered over at the C-Space area, so that's great. But what does it mean to make advertising matter? And the implication there, by the way, is that sometimes advertising doesn't matter. So how are you changing that equation?
That's right, it's a good question. So for us, really, there's a big difference between I didn't not like the ad, and I love the ad, right?
Yes.
There's a big separation between those 2 statements. And so a lot of the stuff that we're looking to do is leverage the 140 years of AT&T, the assets that exist within our portfolio as it relates to distribution, data, advertising capabilities, et cetera, and marry those together to create experiences to kind of empower our fan base to be able to get the right messages to the right customers. We've heard that a long time, but I think AT&T is looking to deliver on that promise. We have a CEO, Brian Lesser, in place here to really drive that message forward, and we've got really all the tools and capability to be successful there. And so again, it's more about, how do you make the ads more relevant? How do you make the brands happier with the messagings that are being pushed out? How do we make the consumers receive messaging that they love, that's polite and non-intrusive? And we've got so many customer touch points to do that. Over 170 million customer touch points. I look at that from the product perspective as so many ways that we can delight our customers with advertising, provide utility, provide value in a way that hasn't been unlocked in the past.
And what is a touch point?
Touch point, yeah, sure. So we've got, for example, DirecTV Now. There's 13 different devices that DirecTV Now is on. And so whether it's Amazon Fire, whether it's Roku, whether it's go down the list of devices, right? Multiple endpoints where you can consume that video. We also have a large broadband consumer base using our cell phone business and others. And so when you add up all of that, broadband subscribers, video subscribers, you get to that reach number, which is powerful for us. A lot of connections there.
So give me an example of when everything is working the way that it should, what is a brand experiencing, what is a consumer experiencing?
Yeah, so they're experiencing highly relevant and targeted advertising, messages that are preempting essentially what it is that their interest and intent is. And so, listen, you want to get an ad that makes the most sense for you. And so our ability through the combination of DirecTV, addressable technology, delivering the right ad to the household, that's not something that's been done on TV for 50 years, right? We unlocked that several years ago. And so making TV advertising more direct and more feel and look like digital, make it more attributable.
Making DirecTV more of DirecTV.
I like that. Maybe we should use that.
You can use that. You can plaster that at C-Space next year if you want.
Fantastic.
You mentioned 140-year history. Alexander Graham Bell started, I don't know if he started a company called AT&T, but effectively you've grown out of that. And your name is Xandr, which I understand is a reference to Alexander Graham Bell. What do you learn from the very early days of the company and even what Alexander Graham Bell was doing? How does that relate to what you do?
Yeah, so listen, Alexander Graham Bell had a vision, and his vision was, how do we transmit audio across the country? How do we take audio, long-term and long distances and make it an effective medium? He didn't have the tooling at the time. He didn't have the technology at the time. He had the vision, and the vision was to accomplish this capability. And so I give a parallel to Xandr. That is our mission. We've got a mission to make advertising matter. And so how are we going to leverage the tools within the AT&T toolkit, as well as the assets with Time Warner and others, to make it matter? And so, right, we're pioneering some paths that, quite frankly, technologically haven't been done.
I once heard that Alexander Graham Bell didn't want people to say hello on the phone. He wanted them to say ahoy. Is that, have you heard that? Is that true? Okay, maybe in the company annals there's some information about that. What is something about the way that consumers are consuming advertising, whether it's television or other places, that based on the data that you have, you know and that might surprise people here at CES?
Good question. So what I would say is, you hear the doom and gloom stories associated with TV, and you look at analyst reports and you say, man, we look at broadcast, we look at cable, and ratings are down, there's less viewership, and there's pressure on the existing business. But the reality is when you look at the reports that we look at, and we look at the network and all the visibility that we have, it's the opposite. We're seeing more engagement today with video and with content than we've seen ever before in our history. And in fact, when you look at those analyst reports on video overall over the last 5 years, it's up. And so while you're seeing maybe traditional viewing down, and that gets a lot of press, the reality is for people like me and in our space, good news, right? The US economy is consuming video, they're consuming more content. It is fragmented. They're not consuming it today, sitting on their couch at 6 o'clock watching it with the family and the kids. They're looking at it through multiple different vectors, and they're using all the platform capabilities that exist for them. And so it's a good news story that I think is not always captured for all of us in this space.
What is some kind of emerging technology that you're looking at on the horizon? Maybe it's something physical here at CES. Yeah. Maybe it's just a concept right now, but what do you think could be really interesting and disruptive in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so listen, I think addressability for us, for TV as a capability perspective is certainly top of that list. We've really scratched the surface on that. We're probably in the third inning or moving up the bell curve in terms of addressability. So I think there's more there for us and other MVPDs to unlock that value. If I really push the envelope for you and say in the next 3 to 5 years, what are a few additional items that I think are really gonna pop? I think there's been a lot of conversations around blockchain. I think blockchain from a transparency and managing ad fraud has some really practical applications that probably from an adoption perspective we'll see. I think 5G coming out and the ability to connect video and connect communities in a way where there's less latency and less battery drain and more content consumption, I think will benefit us. Imagine you're in a car and it's autonomous driving several years from now. What are you going to do with all that time? If the average American's in their car 45 minutes to work, they're probably going to consume more video, more advertising. I think 5G will help that. So there's more, but those two come to mind.
Yeah, blockchain, 5G. Another theme that we've seen here at C-Space, the Influencer Studio this year, trust, consumer trust, brand trust, making sure everybody trusts the metrics are real, making sure that I don't feel like you're being overly creepy when you're targeting me, all of that.
Absolutely.
So how does Xandr think about that going into 2019?
Listen, privacy, API, very, very important for us. Something that we care for in both digital and in TV. We have an opt-in policy that's very, very clear for our customers. It's on the domain, easy to see. It comes down to choice, right? What is the choice? And more than that, what are the options that you provide to your customers around the usage of your data? Yeah. We believe in that, and I would just double click on that and say, listen, you're not in business the way AT&T's been in business for 140 years by misusing customer data, right? And so we've had a very, very cognizant approach to that for a long period of time.
Fill in the blank for me. 2019 is here. We should stop blank and start blank.
Ooh, okay. Stop debating. Start collaborating. I think we're all collectively in it together. We're better together. All ships rise with the tide. We've got an opportunity, I think, to bring advertising together from a formats perspective, from a data targeting and integrity perspective, and so that would be my two.
How about stop, collaborate, and listen? Vanilla Ice style.
Yeah.
Speaking of the youth of today, that's totally not the youth of today, by the way, but you're an adjunct professor, and I know that you teach students at business school, is that correct?
Yeah.
What do you say to them about the future that they're walking into and the careers that they're just embarking on?
Yeah, so two things. One, continuous learning, very important. The second thing is that maybe what your parents have told you is not necessarily true, which is you got to get a good job, you got to stay in that job forever, you do well, and then you're going to move up. I think the reality is, I tell them, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's in your work environment, it's not intuitive. It's not like, hey, I came to every class, I finished my homework on time, I'm going to get an A, right? The reality is there are many more variables and dynamics there.
It's not a box checking exercise anymore.
Right, I tell them when they're in the classroom, it's not about did you get a B+, A- in this class. It's about did you network with everybody in this class, because at the end of the day, 5-10 years from now, you're going to be an executive, and you are going to be moving and shaking these industries. And so being a little more self-aware would be a shorter answer.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the beginning of your career, which I researched on LinkedIn, Events Manager at MTV. That sounds like a very exciting job. You seem like a high energy guy, so I'm sure your energy served you well there. What else did you learn in that job that actually applies to what you do today? What did you do in that job?
Yeah, great question. So I worked there, I had 3 jobs. I was there for 8 years at Viacom. I worked in HR. HR, I realized very quickly I did not like defined benefit plans, but I did like interacting with people.
Yeah.
So I moved into events. I did events for about 4 years. I worked on their Paramount film releases. I worked on TRL in the studio, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
And I worked on the boardroom, which is all the corporate meetings. Here's what I learned very simply. I realized very quickly in my career, man, the marketing team didn't have a ton of money. The HR team, the legal team didn't have money. But these ad sales guys, man, they had the greatest suits. They had the biggest budgets. I said, I got to go that way.
Sure.
And so I really got a good kind of 360 view of corporate America from that seat. And that really helped me jump into now the business side and ad sales where I've been for quite a while.
Matt Van Houten of Xandr, thank you so much for joining me here in the C-Space Influencer Studio.
Appreciate it.
It's been a great conversation. More great conversations are just ahead here in the C-Space Influencer Studio. I'm James Kotecki. Stay with me.